Yunho has lost hope in pursuing his longtime crush and friend, thinking he is straight, but the slight hope he still has is shattered when his friend announces that he is gay but likes someone else. While trying to win back his friend, he unexpectedly bumps into a mythical creature that changes his belief in love and everything else he thought he wanted. Hun smiles mischievously as he again asks Yunho if he is searching for him. Yunho is embarrassed, but he confirms what Hun asks him. Hun's playful side is really cute, just like an adorable tiger cub. Yunho's statement invokes the emotions that Hun desperately sought, but it doesn't change the fact that he is still insecure, so he asks Yunho what happened to Ki Young-hoon. A little irritated, Yunho replies that Naru is there to take care of Ki Young-hoon. He then asks Hun if he is okay and tells him not to complain later about being hurt. Hun assures him that he is fine while thinking about how it feels good to have someone worried about his well-being. While holding Yunho's hands, he leans forward a little, once again inquiring about Ki Young-hoon. This time, Yunho frustratedly tells Hun to worry about his own injuries instead of Ki Young-hoon's, whom he hates. Hun then pulls him forward, hugging him tightly as he assures Yunho that he will focus on himself. Smiling contently, he thinks to himself that this is exactly what he wanted all along. Later that night, they are sitting on the top of the tree Jongwon when Hun pulls Yunho into his lap due to his fear of heights. Once they are settled, Yunho tells him that he had no fear of it when he was young, but after what happened with his family, he starts to be afraid of everything, including heights and water. He dejectedly tells Hun that he thought he had overcome his fear as he always jumped and ran freely on the stage, but it wasn't like that at all. Hun tightens his arms around Yunho and assures him that he can lean on him whenever he feels scared, as he will always be on his side. Listening to his sweet words, Yunho leans his head on Hun's shoulder and confesses how his heart is racing because of what Hun said. They continue to talk as Hun softly holds his hand and says to Yunho that he doesn't need to keep forcing himself to fight his fears. Folks, find yourself who tells you to fight your fears instead of keeping them hidden. He continues to say that they will always be together, and if Yunho has to face any situation that he is afraid of, he will be there. Yunho looks at Hun with stars in his eyes and blushing tells Hun to stop seducing him. He then reminisces about how it feels like it was only recently when he liked Hun for his godly physical appearance. This catches Hun off guard as he asks Yunho if he only likes him because of his looks. Seems like Hun doesn't have a true idea about his own crazy handsome looks. Yunho quickly explains himself, saying that he soon started to like other things about Hun as well. He wraps both of his hands around one of Hunwol's hands and tells him that the other thing he likes about Hun is how kind he is toward Naru, which he saw regularly at Ki Young-hoon's place. It had made him wish that Hun would care for him in the same way he does for Naru. After listening to his explanation, Hun teases him for being possessive, which Yunho confirms while puffing his cheeks. Hun found him so adorable that he squeezed Yunho's cheeks, asking if he got what he wished for. Yunho acts embarrassed for a moment, but then remembering something, he sharply reminds Hun that he needs to apologize to Ki Young-hoon. Hun looks like a sad puppy after Yunho scolds him and agrees to apologize to Ki Young-hoon for his rude behavior. Yunho coos at how cute Hun looks and softly rubs his hair. Hun breaks the momentary silence as he asks Yunho the reason for his anger earlier. Yunho looks sad as he replies to Hun that he is angry because of the cold treatment he is getting from Hun lately. He complains about how Hun doesn't talk to him much and doesn't even initiate any physical connection. Hun is embarrassed by the accusations, while Yunho continues to say that he feels like Hun went back to his old self, where the only person he cares about is Naru. Avoiding Yunho's sharp glares, Hun quickly defends himself, saying it is not like that. He reveals the reason behind his behavior. He wanted to touch Yunho but didn't know what to do when the other kept avoiding him, so he asked Naru for advice, who told him to take a step back instead of rushing things between them. Yunho is confused by Hun's statement but doesn't get a chance to say anything as Hun hugs him tightly again. The mythical tiger confesses that he badly wants to kiss Yunho, but he will not force anything just because of his wish, so he is waiting for the right time. He adds that when Ki Young-hoon's grandmother said those things about him, he couldn't bring himself to be closer to Yunho, but he was determined to not give up on their relationship. Yunho leans back a little to look at Hun's face, who continues that he won't know if it is right for him to stay with Yunho, as he is worried that Yunho might face the same fate as the butterfly Yun. His statement catches Yunho off guard as the feeling that Hun only sees Yun in him comes back with full force. Yunho tells him not to worry about anything, to which Hun agrees while softly kissing his palm. To Hun's surprise, Yunho pulls his hand back and suddenly says that he is not the butterfly Yun. Hun was taken aback. Yunho then explains the real reason why he was avoiding Hun's touch, which was that he wanted Hun to feel the same pain as he did and that he was lying. Yunho finally opens his heart to Hun, telling him how he tried to move on from Ki Young-hoon several times, but it was very hard. His feelings have never changed for the past 10 years, so he imagined that they would stay the same. When Hun came into his life, his feelings started to change. He was happy to think that he had finally met someone who would free him from that predicament. But his hopes were crushed when he heard that he was the reincarnation of the butterfly Yun, thinking his feelings toward Hun were actually Yun's feelings and not his. Yunho confesses that when he came to know about Hun being a mythical tiger, he heard Hun's voice promising to find him in his next life. At that time he didn't know what that statement meant or who was it for, but then he found out about Yun and it confirmed that he was really Yun's reincarnation. Hun is shocked to hear his confession and asks him if what he said was really true, but immediately stops as Yunho is sobbing at this point, saying that he feels like he is vanishing. Yunho is really a crybaby, but it is alright since he looks extremely adorable even when crying. He brokenly requests Hun to not only look for Yun in him, as it makes him feel like Hun doesn't see him as him but only as the reincarnation of the butterfly, and this breaks his heart. Hun is stunned by hearing all this from Yunho and realizes that he didn't consider how Yunho is feeling. He softly hugs Yunho and presses a kiss on his hair, quickly apologizing for his behavior. Hun assures Yunho that he is the only one he has eyes for. Yunho just hums softly and asks him to keep talking. Hun obliges with his request as he keeps reassuring Yunho that he likes him a lot and is sorry for making him feel like he sees Yun in him. Despite what he is saying to Yunho, he also starts to doubt if Yunho actually likes him or if it is just the butterfly's feeling. The thing that worries him most is if Yunho is still crushing on Ki Young-hoon in his heart. He cups Yunho's cheek, saying that he also wants Yunho to only like him. Yunho suddenly starts to bawl his eyes out as he punches Hun with his cotton, first saying that he is crying like this because of Hun, but the latter has still the audacity to doubt his feelings. Seeing Yunho's intense reaction, Hun smirks a little and says that he is happy to know that Yunho is crying for him. Yunho wipes his tears as he confesses that he also wanted to kiss Hun, but since he wasn't sure if Hun actually liked him, he kept avoiding it. The honest confession impresses Hun as he presses a soft kiss on Yunho's forehead and says that there is no reason for them to avoid kissing now. He then softly rubs his thumb under Yunho's eyes and slides it over his lips, confessing that Yunho is the first ever to make him want any type of physical connection. Hun tells him that from when he first saw Yunho naked in Ki Young-hoon's bathroom to when they were lying together in bed after Naru hugged them, he was shocked at the strong reaction of his body. He leans closer to Yunho and rubs his lips, saying that wanted to touch Yunho like this so bad. Hun continued to say the fear of being hated by Yunho always stopped him and proceeded to kiss Yunho on the neck. Putting a hand over his chest, Yunho tells Hun that he doesn't have to hold back anymore and moves to kiss him back. Just then Hei-ro flies in between them, stopping their kiss. We are finally having a main lead kiss, but the goblin flame seems to have other ideas. Hun frustratedly shouts that he doesn't want Hei-ro to protect Yunho like that. His rants stop when Yunho cups his cheek, forcing him to look at him again and gives him a soft peck. Yes, proud of our little human taking the initiative. With red cheeks, Yunho confesses to him that he wants Hun too. Hun's heart starts to beat faster as he dives in again, kissing Yunho with full passion. They continue to make out on the top of the tree, lost in each other. This makes Yunho oversensitive to the sounds around him, and he feels himself getting excited as his ears and lips start to quiver. When they pull back after a while, he gives Hun a tight hug and they stare at each other lovingly. Yunho presses a gentle kiss on Hun's nose while his thoughts wander toward how Hun's hands are so big. Even though he is embarrassed, he still can't stop himself from wondering if everything on Hun's body is big since he is a mythical tiger. Naughty Yunho. Hun continues to touch Yunho all over and presses kisses on his shoulder and neck, which makes Yunho want to run away and never move at the same time. Just then there is a sudden loud sound from the tree which makes Hun pull back instantly. He face palms himself, talking about how he has unintentionally lost control again. Yunho is confused by his sudden reaction, so Hun tells him that Jongwon just asked him if they were going to keep grinding on top of him. This makes Yunho feel embarrassed too, and he offers that they go to his place and continue what they were doing. Despite the tempting offer, Hun hesitates as he doesn't want to lose control when he is alone with Yunho. To his surprise, Yunho doesn't seem scared and instead intrigues him more, saying that he is not sure about who will really be in danger. He then playfully asks the mythical tiger if he wants to take a bite out of him, which makes Hun laugh and finally agree to the invitation. This sweet exchange is like the most awaited conclusion of the story between a butterfly and a tiger, which were forcibly torn apart by fate thousands of years ago. At Yunho's place, the two sat face to face on the bed with both of their faces red. Without shying away, Yunho asks Hun why he is not making any move to touch him like he did moments ago. He wondered why Hun was uncharacteristically shy, to which Hun tries to explain that it feels different when they are in bed but trails off. Knowing that Yunho is still on board with them being intimate, Hun then takes off Yunho's hoodie and throws it away while pushing Yunho to lie down. Fellas, consent is very important, learn from our tiger. After making sure that Yunho is fine with what he is doing, Hun hovers over him and starts unzipping Yunho's sweater. He then began kissing his neck and touching Yunho all over, who was flushed by all the attention he was getting. Hun pulls back after a minute, and seeing the hickey on Yunho's neck, he starts to regret his impulsiveness again. His first instinct is to apologize, but Yunho just jokes about the situation and pulls Hun down for a hug. He asks Hun if he is trying to mark his territory, and seeing Hun's embarrassed face, he is blown away by the tiger's cuteness. Hun confesses that it is hard for him to control himself when he is with Yunho. He looks into Yunho's eyes and admits that since he is a tiger, he is always worried about hurting Yunho when they are intimate. Listening to his insecurities, Yunho reminds him that he said that even though he finds it hard to interact with humans, he will try to do so. He continues that he knows Hun cares about his well-being and he is thankful for everything he does. Yunho then assures Hun that it is alright if he goes a little extra and that as of now he is being way too careful. His words give Hun a boost as he leans down, pressing another kiss to Yunho's lips. When he pulls back again, Hun asks Yunho to be his mate. This confuses Yunho a little, but he figures out that Hun is trying to ask him out. Seeing his confusion, Hun hugs him and clarifies his proposal means that he doesn't want Yunho to look at anyone else except him and he will do the same in return. Yunho agrees to Hun's request, even calling him his mate. Hun is ecstatic with his reply and shows his excitement by kissing Yunho on his chest and stomach. Yunho suddenly sits up a little as he musters up the courage and asks Hun to live with him. The sudden request left Hun speechless, but Yunho told him again, admitting that it was taking him everything to ask this to Hun. However, before Hun could reply, the doorbell rang. Why does everyone keep interrupting them? With their messy appearances, they both go to open the door and find Yunho's friend Juho standing there. Yunho looks at his friend with a sheepish smile while Hun stands there glaring at Juho. Pretending that he didn't interrupt something, Juho gives Yunho honeyed pears and reminds him to be careful not to catch a cold while touching Yunho's cheek. Yunho replies that he is alright but is still thankful to Juho for bringing him that. His friend nonchalantly replies that he doesn't mind as he always makes extra anyway. Just then Juho notices the hickey on Yunho's neck, which irks him a lot. He turns around Hun and asks him why he is still here at this hour. Hun is already not happy with Juho's presence, so he quickly hugs Yunho, pressing a kiss on his temple, and announces that he is going to live there from today on. After hearing that Juho doesn't want to stay there for much longer and leaves after saying goodbye to Yunho. As Juho left, Hun hugged Yunho, who asked if he was really going to stay there. Hun presses a kiss on his cheek, saying he is looking forward to living together with Yunho. Meanwhile, Juho, who is on his way home, feels a little disappointed with what he saw at Yunho's place. Still, he is happy that Yunho found someone special and wants him to keep smiling like that. Just then he receives a message from someone named Sungwoo, who is asking him out for dinner. As soon as he reads the message, a smile returns to his face. I am glad that Juho has someone he likes, even though he is oblivious, but his smile shows it all. Back at his place, Yunho is lying on the bed and asks Hun to sleep with him. Hun, who is ready to sleep on the sofa, replies that he is comfortable there and that he may have to go for a job in the middle of the night, so he doesn't want to disturb Yunho. In contrast to what he said to Yunho, the real reason behind Hun sleeping on the sofa is that he is afraid of losing control like before and hurting Yunho in the process. Slowly they both fall asleep, but after a while Yunho wakes up again and sneaks out of bed, not wanting to give up that easily. He tiptoes toward the sofa and stands there for a moment, praising and thinking about how handsome Hun looks even when he is asleep. He then pulls the cover off Hun and climbs on top of him to lie on his chest, not caring what he will think about that. Hun is shocked at first, but his admiration for Yunho grows. He softly presses a kiss on Yunho's hair, completely in awe of how adorable he is. Yunho is way too cute for my weak heart to handle. Sometime later, Juho is sitting in a cafe asking the one who invited him what is so important to talk about that he even waits for him after work. He then sharply asks if this person, who turns out to be Hun, wants to show off that he managed to be with Yunho. Hun replies that since they both don't want to be here, he will not waste their time on useless talk. He says that he wants to know more about Yunho as he doesn't want to make any mistakes in their relationship, and for that he needs Yunho's friends to help. Surprisingly, Juho is relieved to hear this and confesses that he found Hun very intimidating at first, and when he saw that hickey on Yunho's neck a few days ago, it worried him more. He thought Hun was pushing his friend, but now he knows it is not like that. Hun is amused to hear that as he murmurs that he is the one who is being pushed around. He suddenly notices something and asks Juho if he knows the man staring intently at them through the window. Juho turns around and finds his friend Sungwoo standing there. He quickly signs Sungwoo to go home, who turns around while glaring at Hun. Juho apologizes to Hun for the disturbance, saying that it was his colleague. These side ships always have the potential of their own book and we would love to read it. They continue their conversation as Hun requests that Juho tell him everything about Yunho. Juho starts by telling him how he and Yunho trained together at the same entertainment agency for 2 years, but had lost contact when Juho moved abroad because of his parents. When he came back for university, he asked Yunho out and they ended up dating. Their relationship went on for a year, during which they lived together. Soon they broke up, but luckily stayed friends. Juho says that Hun might have known this story already and that he is sure it is difficult for him to understand their dynamic. Why he was still hanging around Yunho when they were long over. He then reminisces when he and Yunho talk about how their relationship was not a romantic one, which Yunho greatly apologizes for. He is sure that his old self will be surprised at him now. At the time of the breakup, he had assured Yunho that they would still be friends, softly caressing Yunho's tearful face. Despite being teary himself, Juho hugged Yunho, promising to always be there for Yunho and to welcome him with open arms when he got tired of chasing Ki Young-hoon. Hearing this, Yunho profusely thanked him for being there for him. Juho then realizes only after dating Yunho that the only thing he wants for Yunho is to be happy. While sitting there, he assures Hun that the only thing they did when they were together was hug and kiss, so he doesn't have to worry about that. Even after Juho attempts to make him feel better, Hun is still jealous after learning that Yunho shared kisses with Juho. His worries are alleviated when Juho says that he is just close friends with Yunho now. Juho's only wish is to see his friends happy, and he is satisfied to see Yunho smile while being with Hun. He tells Hun that his desires are not as important to him as Yunho's happiness. The selfless statement of Juho surprised Hun as he realized that humans were not like he had thought them to be all along. This makes him wonder if he will be able to be as understanding as Juho when Yunho breaks up with him in the future. Hun suddenly remembers the time when Ki Young-hoon gave him the keys to Yunho's apartment. The realization hits him that all humans around Yunho are opposite to what he had expected them to be. He finally considers the possibility that he was quick to judge humans, which makes him think that he might be more selfish than he thought humans were. Hun wonders if he even deserves Yunho when Juho interrupts his thoughts by starting to tell him about Yunho's quality. Juho tells him how Yunho's personality attracts everyone around him and that he is like a born star. He talks about how Yunho was even more amazing before the accident with his family happened, which saddens Hun. Juho continues to reveal details about Yunho, how he likes to eat chocolate, listen to the rain at home, and also listen to music. We all need a selfless and attentive ex like Juho. According to him, Yunho sleeps wearing masks at times because as a singer he needs to protect his throat from colds, so he tells Hun not to make a fuss about it. Yunho is a hard worker but is someone who gets lonely easily and is most afraid of losing people. Just then thunder can be heard from outside, which turns the direction of Juho's explanation. He says that on the days when there is thunder and storm, Ki Young-hoon would rush over to Yunho, which is something that happened even when they were dating in the past. The loud thunder actually triggers Yunho's memories of the crash to resurface, so Ki Young-hoon is always ready to help him in that situation. The accident has left Yunho extremely traumatized, and Ki Young-hoon has helped him deal with this for a long time. Even though he was dating Yunho, Juho always felt like there was no place for him, so after figuring out how much Yunho needed Ki Young-hoon, he began to let go. He always doubted if Ki Young-hoon considered Yunho more than a friend, considering how much he cared for him. In the past, Ki Young-hoon didn't even know that Yunho was dating Juho and always thought they were good friends and roommates. Juho hopes that things are different now that Ki Young-hoon knows about Hun and Yunho's relationship. Hun quickly gathers himself after listening to all the revelations and quickly stands up to get to Yunho right away. However, Juho stops him before he can leave and says that Yunho is someone who cries a lot and it is simply his way of seeking comfort. So when he is all alone and doesn't cry when he should, Hun must stay by his side. Juho's eyes are filled with tears as he requests Hun to never leave Yunho alone and to always hold on to him, something that he was not able to do. Hun promises to take care of Yunho and leaves the cafe. When Hun reaches Yunho's place, he finds Ki Young-hoon holding a trembling Yunho in his arms. The scene in front of him made him realize that things are the same as they were in the past. He reaches out to Yunho softly, asking him if he is all right. Yunho had always remembered how his family looked because he had their pictures, but with time he became unable to recall their voices. The sounds he always wanted to remember were slowly fading away, but the ones that he wanted to forget kept replaying in his ears. Any sound close enough to those always brings back the terrible memories connected with them. That day when it started raining, he tried to deal with it alone, muffling the sound by closing the windows, putting on earplugs, and hiding under covers. However, it can only do so much, so he desperately wished for Hun to get back quickly, but it wasn't him who was there to help him. When Hun sees the situation in front of him, he understands what Juho means when he says that he feels like there is no room for him. For a moment, he stands there helplessly thinking about what he should do. Just then he remembers how Yunho promised to be his mate. The memory gives him new hope as he tells himself that he is not Juho who will give up so easily. Yunho is his partner, and he is determined to hold him in whatever situation is there. Yunho is still thinking about how the other sounds become muffled when he covers his ears, but he can still clearly hear the sound of thunder. He relates the sound akin to a car crash, making him lose his mind. Yunho comes out of his depressing thoughts when Ki Young-hoon tells him that Hun is here. Hun asks him if he is okay, but instead of replying, Yunho just opens his arms, asking Hun to hurry and hold him. Without wasting another moment, Hun rushes forward and pulls Yunho into his lap as they both sit on the sofa. Ki Young-hoon soon leaves after telling Hun to take care of Yunho. When they are left alone, Yunho looks at Hun with a tear-stained face and asks why he came so late. Hun presses a soft kiss on his temple, apologizing for coming late. Yunho just stared at him astonished, as he couldn't understand how Hun's voice made all the other sounds fade away. He leans his head on Hun's shoulder, assuring him that he did nothing wrong, and then requests that he keep talking. Hun tightens his arms around Yunho as he softly pats his back while whispering words of comfort to him. Yunho repeats the words in his mind as Hun promises to always stay by his side. Hun keeps talking, and listening to his soothing voice, Yunho slowly falls asleep. When he notices that Yunho has fallen asleep, Hun is shocked for a bit but then realizes that Yunho must have been very scared. He presses a gentle kiss on Yunho's forehead, once again assuring him that he is okay now. The next morning when Yunho wakes up, he comes face to face with a sleeping Hun in his bed. He looks at their joined hands and realizes that he slept well because Hun was by his side, making his heart go soft. He is startled out of his thoughts when Hun suddenly asks him if he slept okay. Yunho quickly apologizes for waking Hun, who leans toward him, slowly rubbing his head on Yunho's neck. Hun replies to his apology that it is fine as he was going to wake up anyway, and says sorry for being late last night. The soft attitude of Hun makes Yunho think of him as a huge cat as they continue to lie there sharing kisses. At their studio, his band member Jongho exclaimed how Yunho was happy up until a few days ago, but now he looks very sad to their other members. They look at a gloomy Yunho walking around as Yoondu tells others that Yunho is looking forward to living with Hun, but it has been 3 days since he last heard from him. Later that day, Yunho goes to meet Naru, who apologizes to him, saying that Hun is busy because of him. He explains that various types of evil spirits come out in the winter season, so they get busy. Since Naru is not well, Hun also has to cover his work. Yunho gently tells him to not be sorry for this, saying that he is just worried about Hun since they now live together. He wants to know if Hun is alright but can't contact him because Hun doesn't have a mobile phone. Naru assures him that Hun will be free today and will soon come back home. That night, Yunho was peacefully sleeping in his bed when Hun came. Quickly changing out of his work outfit, Hun sits on the bed beside Yunho and softly caresses his cheek. Yunho wakes up and is surprised to see that Hun is back. Hun leans down teasingly, saying that Naru has told him that Yunho is impatiently awaiting his return. Yunho is embarrassed to hear that and tries to deny the accusation, but is startled when Hun says that he will leave in that case. He quickly holds Hun's hand and pulls him back, asking him not to leave. Hun swooned at Yunho's cute actions and quickly laid in bed, tightly hugging Yunho. He promises Yunho that he won't leave again, confessing that he is even more impatient to see Yunho. Once they are settled, Yunho asks him if he was hurt, to which he quickly replies no, while thinking about how much he loved seeing Yunho worry and thinking of only him. Yunho then complained that he was struggling to go anywhere due to the winter and suddenly started coughing. Hun is worried that Yunho has caught a cold and quickly wraps the blanket around him. Yunho is not happy about being sick as he irritatedly says that it is probably just dryness, but he should be able to take care of his throat as he is a singer. Hun quickly tells him not to be hard on himself and brings him a cup of hot milk. Yunho thanks Hun for the drink as he worries about performing the year-end performance in this state. He then tells Hun that his friend is from a very famous boy band and is doing a collaboration with him, so Hun has to attend his concert. Hun agrees to watch his performance and then asks him if he knows the way to quickly get rid of the cold. Yunho is confused by what he is saying, so Hun explains that it is receiving tiger energy. Only if we also had a tiger to warm us up in the freezing weather, but I think for now we will have to rely on the blankets. When Yunho asks him how he can do that, Hun starts to touch him intimately, saying this is the way he is talking about. To his surprise, Yunho pushes him away and turns away from him, pulling the cover to his body. Hun presses a kiss, saying that this way he can get rid of the cold overnight, but Yunho shyly refuses to receive help this way. Hun still doesn't back away as he throws the covers away and pulls Yunho toward him. He lies on top of Yunho, who wraps his arms around Hun's neck as they share a passionate kiss. Hun is thinking about how the sounds Yunho makes when they are intimate make him want to tease him more. Gasping through his breaths, Yunho says that he is worried that Hun will also get sick, but the tiger assures him that it will not be the case as mythical creatures can't get sick. Hun continues to touch him intimately, rubbing his stomach through his shirt. A blushing Yunho tells him not to take off his clothes due to his cold. Hun continues exploring his body while saying that he won't take off his clothes, but Yunho should feel the warmth of his hands. Amidst their passionate embraces, Hun suddenly feels an evil energy that startles him. Guess their happiness is not going to last for long, let's see what happens. Yunho is oblivious to his thoughts and drags Hun out of his thoughts when he starts complimenting Hun's body, his finger poking his stomach. Hun lunges forward again, pressing kisses to Yunho's cheek, who again warns him about his cold. He softly holds Yunho's hand, using it to trace his abs as he tells Yunho that he can touch him freely as he is all his. Yunho chuckles to hear that and mentions how Hun shouldn't say that as he is not some object. This also confuses Hun, who asks what he should say instead. This time Yunho held his hand to touch his body and advised Hun to say that he would only give permission to Yunho as they were mates. In return, he also agrees to only give permission to Hun. The mention of mates reminded me of all the werewolf stories. Hun and Yunho are perfect to be an alpha and omega. They both mutually agree on the statement, and Yunho wraps his hands around Hun, hugging him. He softly pats Hun's back, saying that he should take care of his body in any case. Yunho also confesses that when Hun said he belonged to him, it made his heart skip a beat. Listening to all this, Hun is thinking about how Yunho is so sweet when Yunho suddenly coughs again. This worries him a little as he buries his head in Yunho's chest, pleading with him not to get sick. They switch positions, and now Yunho lays his head on Hun's chest, ready to fall asleep. Hun wishes him a good night's sleep, pressing a soft kiss to his hair. Yunho slowly falls asleep while thinking about how handsome and warm his mate is. Somewhere else in the city, a big black and red evil snake is flying around mysteriously, talking about finding someone. The next morning, Hun ends up catching Yunho's cold, which amuses Yunho, but he gives Hun a kiss to make it all better. As a mythical creature, Hun was always able to hear the ticking of the clock on silent nights. He realizes that the sound might be coming from within himself, and it has gotten so much louder recently. He feels like the sound is an indication that he has lived for too long and that his time on Earth is coming to an end. In the past, he didn't mind the idea of death because he had no reason to live and nothing that would make him want to stay. Now things have changed and he is scared of dying. Instead, he wants to live and grow old like a normal human being. Outside of these thoughts, Hun has been sleeping on Yunho's bed and is woken up by the rustling sound of clothes. He is surprised to find that Yunho is already leaving, even though it is still very early in the morning. Yunho sits beside him, softly caressing his cheek, and says that today is his year-end performance. He asks Hun to join Ki Young-hoon and Naru, who are later coming to watch his performance. Hun suddenly pulls him down, making Yunho wish that he could have pre-recorded the performance and watched it together with Hun. Hun agrees with his statement while silently thinking about how Yunho makes his empty heart feel full and beat excitedly. Yunho softly traces his lips while Hun is amazed by how looking into Yunho's eyes makes him forget everything. Yunho leans forward to press a kiss on his cheek, saying that he will do his best in the event, so he'll save Hun's lips for later as a reward. He then gets up to leave as Hun finally concludes that he never felt this kind of emotion before, where every fiber of his being resonates to another. He now understands what it means to be truly happy and love someone. It makes him wish to never lose his newfound emotions. Later that day, Ki Young-hoon, Naru, and Hun reach Yunho's performance venue with all the stuff. Laying the food they bought on the table, Ki Young-hoon announces that they just need cups and utensils. Naru quickly says that he and Hun will bring them. Hun suddenly whispers to Naru that a few days ago he felt its energy. Shocked, Naru asks if Hun is talking about the evil spirit he mentioned a while ago. Hun confirms that it is and that he wants to catch it as soon as possible, as he has a bad feeling about it. Naru also suggests that they should also get an officer's help for that, which they both agree on. Meanwhile, Yunho is performing hard during their dress rehearsal. His friend from the famous boy band asks him to take it easy as it is not the final performance. Yunho blushes a little as he says that today he needs to perform well. His friend teases him about wanting to impress someone, and he gladly confesses, saying he wants to do it for his mate. At the time of the show, the host announced that the next performance was a collaboration between band Re-Evoke and Jun Hyun from another band called Clover 9. Hun is sitting with Naru and Ki Young-hoon, who had forced him to wear Re-Evoke's merchandise, as they get ready to cheer for Yunho. Hun is a perfect fanboy. Before the performance starts, the host says that the fans of both groups already know about the friendship between Yunho and Junhye. The co-host adds to the conversation, saying that they heard that Yunho was originally the main vocalist of Clover 9 and trained together with Junhye. The host replies that it is good that they will get to see Yunho as an idol singer today. They then announce the vacancies in the band Clover 9 due to a few members of the band fulfilling their military service. Finally, they welcome the singers on stage to perform their songs together. Hun is completely focused on the stage and is amazed when Yunho shows up in a white outfit that is almost identical to what Hun usually wears, with his mint green hair styled perfectly. Everyone is amazed by the performance, and Hun also stares at Yunho adoringly while thinking about how Yunho was worried for nothing. He remembers how a few hours ago, when Yunho ended his rehearsal, he rushed to hug Hun. Yunho jumped on Hun as he cried about how he still couldn't get their routine right and was worried he would mess up on stage. Yunho continued to blow everyone's minds with his amazing looks and captivating stage presence, and made Hun, along with Naru and Ki Young-hoon, completely immersed in the performance. Yunho ends the performance with a wink toward the audience, and Hun blushes bright red, assuming that it was specially meant for him. After the first performance with Jun Hyun, they came back as Re-Evoke to perform another song. This time, Yunho has let his shirt slip from his shoulder, perfectly showing his arm tattoo, which gives him more of a bad boy vibe. Naru and Ki Young-hoon kept cheering loudly for Yunho, chanting his name loudly, while Hun just stared at him astonished. He thinks about how Yunho is a completely different person while performing and shines brightly on stage. That night after the show, Yunho is walking back home alone with the goblin flame Hae-ro following him. He talks about how he wants to get home quickly and how he should have taken a ride from the guys. He remembers that others are waiting and asks Hae-ro if they should buy food. Unbeknownst to him, an evil spirit is silently watching him walk back home and recognizes him as the human whom Hun cherishes, since the tiger's scent emanates from Yunho. Yunho is still happily talking to Hei-ro, saying he wants to know what Hun felt about his performance. Hei-ro softly rubs himself on Yunho's cheek as they continue their walk back home. Suddenly Yunho hears the evil spirit, who tells him to blame this on the tiger and suddenly attacks them. Meanwhile, Hun is at home waiting for Yunho to come back home quickly. Like a repeat of the distant past, an evil being aimed to swallow the butterfly. Hun is at home waiting with Ki Young-hoon and Naru for Yunho to come back home. Instead of Yunho, Hei-ro comes back there first, worrying Hun as he quickly asks him where Yunho is. Naru holds Hei-ro in his hand, shocked when the goblin flame tells them that Yunho was abducted. They didn't waste any time and immediately rushed to the place where Yunho was attacked by the evil spirit. There they find Yunho's bag and the white coat he was wearing that morning. Hun stands up quickly, saying that the evil spirit left Yunho's things and its own tracks to lure him in. Even though he is panicking, Hun is determined to not lose Yunho like he lost the butterfly Yun. Naru gives Yunho's stuff to Ki Young-hoon and is ready to join Hun on his mission to rescue Yunho. Ki Young-hoon tries to protest, but Naru just says that they will bring Yunho back home. Meanwhile, Yunho wakes up in an unknown place, not recognizing where he is. He is startled when a red bony snake hovering in the air talks, asking him if he is fully awake. Yunho is shocked by the situation and asks the being, which is clearly an evil spirit, to identify itself and explain why he is doing this to him. Suddenly he feels the sharp pain in his arm and looks to find a huge cut on it. He turns his attention back to the evil spirit, who is surprised by the fact that even though Yunho can see him, he is still not afraid. The evil spirit then says that he has nothing against Yunho, but it is because of Hun that he is in danger. Yunho sharply replies that if he is planning to harm Hun in any way, he can't do it. The evil spirit just replies that by now Hun should be on his way after finding the hints he has left for him. He then says that before Hun gets here, Yunho should know the despicable things Hun did in the past, piquing his interest. The evil spirit then starts telling the story that a long time ago a butterfly and mythical fox whom Hun adored were killed and hurt by humans. Yunho figures that he is talking about Naru and Yun. The evil spirits continue his story, saying that at the time the only thing Hun wanted was to take revenge for his friends. He then comments on how Yunho would never be with Hun if he had seen that look of revenge in the tiger's eyes. When those humans who had hurt Naru and Yun died, Hun fed their souls to the evil spirit. After the evil spirit had eaten those souls, they didn't disappear. Instead, they became a part of him and coexisted within him. He explained that beings like him and those souls can only be killed by mythical creatures. He loved eating those souls because in return he got the 49 days given to those souls as an extension. Due to that, he was able to prolong his time on Earth, becoming even more powerful. Yunho is shocked to hear all this, but the surprise doesn't stop as the evil spirit further reveals that once he ate the last soul, Hun wanted to take revenge on Hun, tried to kill him, so he had to run to save himself. Yunho is confused and asks him why he has shown up now, to which the evil spirit replies that it is because he is now strong enough to eliminate the tiger. Yunho shouts no, hearing that, but the evil spirit just laughs and asks how he feels about Hun now. Yunho replies that he will only believe all this when Hun is the one telling him that. The evil spirit doesn't stop as he says that Hun, whom Yunho loves so much, was the one who made him this evil. He reveals how he was also a human and was very scared when his soul left his body. At that time he met Hun, who told him that if he wanted to avoid perishing, he would have to eat other souls. Yunho is devastated to hear all this as he presses his hands on his ears, begging the evil spirit to stop talking. Ignoring Yunho's request, the evil spirit continues his rant, saying that Hun hates humans with all his heart. Since Yunho is a human, he is just a plaything for Hun. Yunho yells back, saying that Hun has never treated him as such. The evil spirit just chuckles, saying he wants to know what Yunho thinks about how he might know one or more souls that he ate in order to continue living in this world. He tells Yunho to consider the possibility that someone he knows is living inside the evil spirit, suffering from excruciating pain even after their death. Yunho is stunned to hear this as the evil spirit asks him if he will be able to forgive Hun in this situation. Yunho starts sobbing, saying that it is all lies, as Hun would never do something this evil. The evil spirit is still adamant about what he said, telling Yunho that he needs to accept that Hun is not what he thought him to be. Just then comes Hun's voice, shouting at the evil spirit to get away from Yunho. The evil spirit is happy that Hun is finally here, while Yunho slides back toward the wall. Hun and Naru both rush inside. Hun focuses on the evil spirit while Naru quickly asks Yunho if he is fine. Yunho assures them that he is okay, and Hun turns toward the evil spirit, telling Yunho to hold on. Before Hun could do something, the evil spirit said that if they tried stepping any closer to him, Yunho would get hurt. Hun notices Yunho holding his injured arm and looking at the scene unfolding in front of him. Hun shouts at the evil spirit, asking for his reason for doing all this. His statement makes the evil spirit angry as he asks if Hun really doesn't know or is just trying to act dumb. He then says that the first souls he ate because of Hun had their wish for revenge merged with him, and that is why he is doing all this. If Hun hadn't fed him the souls, they would not have been trapped inside him, and hearing them telling him to destroy Hun, He has two options, either tear Hun into pieces or end Yunho instead, whom Hun cares about the most, as he says that the evil spirit wraps his arm around Yunho's neck ready to squeeze him. A panicked Hun shouts at him to stop, which only amuses the evil spirit, who says that he has a better idea and pulls Yunho up from the ground. He then announces that he will kill Yunho and eat his soul, trapping it inside his body forever. The evil spirit then says to Yunho that he is the first living human that he is going to personally kill. This is not an honor, you dumb evil monster. With one limb still wrapped around Yunho's neck, the evil spirit spread his other arms all around the room. Pretending to be downcast, he then says that he was enjoying their chat and it is all Hun's fault that they have to stop. Not wasting any time, he is ready to attack him, but just then Hun sends a bolt of his power toward the limb wrapped around Yunho's neck. Due to this, the evil spirit loses its hold on Yunho, causing him to fall from where he was hanging in the air. Before Yunho could fall to the ground, Hun rushed toward him and caught him in his arms. He quickly wraps both arms around Yunho and settles him on the ground, asking if he is alright as Naru and the goblin flames surround them. Yunho just brokenly says Hun's name, who looks at his injured arms. Hei-ro quickly starts to heal Yunho while Hun apologizes for putting him in danger. Yunho looks at him, saying that it must be a lie that he created this evil spirit. To his shock, Hun confesses that it is true that he was the one behind the birth of this evil creature. The evil spirit is happy to get his claims validated, but they ignore him, still focused on their conversation. Yunho again repeats the whole scenario, talking about how this evil spirit was just a mere human soul that turned into this monster because Hun fed him souls to get revenge. Hearing these facts from his mate, Hun was unable to reply and could only look down guiltily. Before he could say anything in return, he noticed the evil spirit ready to attack them. Hun quickly wraps his arms around both Yunho and Naru, hiding them from the danger. In exchange, Hun gets hit on his back, getting big slashes behind. Seeing his mate in danger, Yunho starts to cry while Naru rushes to fight against the evil spirit. The goblin flames are fast enough to start healing Hun, who doesn't care about his injuries. Hun then softly wraps his arm around Yunho, telling him not to cry and again apologizing for exposing him to such danger. Using a little speck of his magic, Hun puts Yunho to sleep and then tells Naru to take him home with Hei-ro, as he will take care of the situation here with the help of goblin flames. Naru leaves after being told to be careful and announcing that he will inform the officer about this. The evil spirit laughs to see this, mocking the drama in front of him, and asks if Hun will be able to fight him after suffering those injuries. Hun shouts that he is sorry for what he did to him and the other souls in the past, but still it was a mistake that they touched Yunho. He lets his fangs slide down and growls as he jumps toward the evil spirit. They both face each other and Hun announces that he will make him pay for what he did to Yunho. However, the evil spirit is unfazed by all the threats and instead tries to provoke Hun by asking if Yunho will stay with him even after knowing everything. He says that Yunho must now think that Hun is a monster and will be scared by the possibility of becoming evil if he stays with Hun. The notion of Yunho becoming scared of him starts to get to Hun. While Hun is lost in his thoughts, the evil spirit is happily thinking about becoming very powerful after eating the soul of a mythical creature and aims to attack Hun. Hun is just standing there kind of dazed when someone drags him out of his thoughts, asking him what he is doing here with that evil spirit. Hun is surprised when he looks around and finds a higher official standing there. The writer casually drops another character who looks like he is specially curated. By the way, is it just me or does this officer look strangely like Jimin from BTS? The officer seems angry with Hun as he says that thankfully Naru called him to handle the situation and asks Hun if he is planning to fight revenge with revenge. He then says that he will deal with Hun's sins later, but first they need to send this evil spirit to the afterlife. Hun obediently agrees and gets ready to fight alongside the officer. At Yunho's place, he is sitting in his bed with Naru and Ki Young-hoon staying close by. Just then Hun comes back and Naru quickly asks him if he has taken care of the evil spirit with the help of the officer. Noticing Hun's expression, Naru promptly leaves from there with Ki Young-hoon. Hun stands a few feet away from the bed as Yunho asks him about the wound he got earlier while fighting against the spirit and if he is alright. Hun quickly replies that he has healed his wound and instead asks Yunho how he is feeling. Yunho replies that their friends took good care of him, so he is doing well now. Hun takes a step forward but halts in his step when Yunho flinches away, wondering if the latter is scared of him now. He just stands there shocked when Yunho calls his name. Hun braces himself, dreading what Yunho will say. Trembling, Yunho tells him that they should take a short break. Hun is startled to hear this and tries to explain himself, but Yunho just covers his ears, saying he doesn't want to hear anything. He tries to protest, but Yunho stops him, reminding him that he confessed to doing all those evil things. Yunho says that since he learned that information, he keeps thinking about how he would feel if that monster had also eaten his family's souls. He says that Hun might not understand his anger about something that didn't even happen, as Hun doesn't have any family that turned into souls. Hun just stands there silently listening to Yunho lashing out. Yunho continues how he feels heartbroken for the souls that were trapped in that evil spirit, which was also manipulated by Hun. He starts to cry uncontrollably, saying he doesn't know what he is supposed to do with the realization that Hun could be the one he should really be scared. Hun just says sorry repeatedly with a broken heart, but Yunho just keeps crying and begs Hun to just leave. Covering his face with one hand as if stopping himself from crying, Hun disappears after saying sorry one last time. Yunho is devastated by all this, but he still regrets being so harsh on Hun. Hun is sitting at his usual spot under his favorite tree, badly missing Yunho. Suddenly Naru comes there and sits beside his friend, asking the latter if he is fine. Hun just replies that he is, but Naru is not satisfied as he says that Hun has been like this for a week now. Hun just hums again in response, which irritates Naru, who doubts if Hun is even paying attention to what he said. Seeing as Hun still won't speak to him, Naru just sighs and leaves from there. The bright glow of the afternoon changes to the night's dark melancholy. Hun still just sat there reminiscing about how Yunho had flinched away from his touch. The fear that Yunho might think of him as a monster is crushing Hun's heart, but he is unable to do anything about it. He buries his head in his knees while thinking that it is all his fault, as he was the one who wanted to take revenge but instead ended up in this situation. Hun thinks that he saved Yunho so he wouldn't die like the butterfly, and that should be a positive thing. He dismisses his own thoughts and again returns to thinking about how he longs for Yunho. Hun is wondering if Yunho is okay with not seeing him and wishes that he should have said he was hurting when Yunho asked him about his injury. He wished that he had cried at the time so Yunho would hold him and his pain would disappear. Meanwhile, Yunho is sitting in a restaurant with his bandmates but is completely immersed in his thoughts. He also misses Hun a lot and can't stop thinking about how Hun must be suffering. He remembers how Hun was always sweet to him all this time and accepted all his tantrums, but in return he hurt him. He comes out of his thoughts when his friend taps him on the shoulder asking what's wrong. Yunho shares his worries with them, revealing how he found some new things about Hun that upset him a lot. He was very angry at the time and pushed Hun away, which must have been very hurtful. After listening to him, Jong-ho says that he can understand the situation, as Yunho always wants the other person to be honest and to communicate well. He reminds Yunho it is fine to be like that, but some people like to keep things bottled up and suffer alone, not wanting to put the burden on the other person. Yundu comments that it is just like someone he knows. Okay, I see another couple here. Shippers have eyes sharper than a hawk. Ignoring his comments, Jong-ho just leans his head on Yundu's shoulder while saying to Yunho that Hun must hide things from him because he cares about him so much. He says that it would be good if someone else who knows Hun's pain helps him, but if that is not the case, Yunho should go if he also cares about Hun. Later that day, Naru goes to Yunho's place and says that he wants to tell him something. Our angel again came to save the day. Yunho invites him in and serves him tea as they both sit on the sofa. Naru starts the conversation saying that it must be strange for him to drop by unexpectedly and say these things as he starts to recount everything from the beginning. He tells Yunho that when he first came to this world he was very anxious and doubted everyone around him. Since he doesn't have a specific gender, he always thought he was just created to protect and accompany Hun. Due to his own insecurities, he hated Hun even though he was never mean to Naru. One day when Hun was taking care of him, he bit him hard on his hand. To his shock, Hun just softly patted his head and calmed him down. And with the help of Goblin Flame, Hun taught Naru how to heal, even though the bite must have been painful for Hun. Not to be that annoying person, but Hun and Naru would also be a great ship, but guess we have to admire them as a ghost ship. At that time, Naru finally let go of his hatred and started liking Hun. To him, Hun is both a friend and a parent, the latter being the reason he is so overprotective of Naru. He says that he still remembers the expression on Hun's face when they first met. Even though he is a mythical tiger who lived for a very long time, he warmly welcomed the fox who just came into this world. Yunho hums softly as Naru continues that Hun is not a bad tiger and all of this happened because of him. All three of his friends, he and the butterfly and Hun, faced the consequences of him being too weak. Yunho quickly hugs Naru, who has tears streaming down his face at this point. He asks Naru not to blame himself as it was his friend's choice to help him. Naru softly agrees with him and then says that Hun really needs him. Yunho pushes him back a little and cleans his tear-stained face with his sleeve while asking if Hun needs him because he is the butterfly Yun. Naru quickly denies that and says that it is because Yunho can do something that Yun failed to do. Yunho is confused to hear this, so Naru wraps his arms around Yunho and says it is because he can hug Hun and be there for him. Naru then says that Hun might make the things that happened to him look like nothing, but that is not true. This reminds Yunho of what his bandmate said about Hun hiding his true feelings to protect Yunho, so he asks Naru to tell him everything. Naru starts his story by first confirming if Yunho knows about them seeing a soul's memories when it passes through them. He says that among those memories, the most clear ones are the moment the person has died, as they are the most recent ones. With those memories, they can also feel the fear the person felt when they died, so whenever they faced a soul who died a gruesome death, Hun transported them through himself. He always fulfilled the tasks that were hard for Naru and endured all the pain alone. At first I thought Hun was suspicious, but he is the greenest flag. When Naru's body grew weaker, Hun handled more of his work, which must have been very hard for him. He says that he knows it is not good for him to pressure Yunho into anything, but he requests him to not hate Hun. Yunho stays silent in return, thinking about what Naru said, as it makes him worried for Hun's well-being. Naru continues by saying that Hun hated humans because of what happened to Yun and Naru. However, the memories Hun saw while sending souls to the afterlife, which are not always kind, drove him to make that decision. Naru says that he is aware that many souls were unjustly imprisoned in the evil spirit and endured needless suffering for a long time. But he also saw Hun regret his actions, as he kept on searching for the evil spirit all this time to set things straight. He learned from the officer that Hun had not only freed the souls from the evil spirit and sent them to the afterlife, but that he had led every single one of them through himself. This meant that Hun received all of those souls' memories and bitterness. Naru says that Hun must be suffering right now, as Yunho shockingly yells that this is so cruel. Naru says that even though it was cruel, it was Hun's punishment, and he insisted on taking it even when the officer offered to help him. Naru then looks at Yunho, saying that it is surprising that Hun, who hated humans with all his might, gave his heart to a human. Naru starts to regret his decision to tell Yunho, as he knows how kind Yunho is, but he desperately wants him to forgive Hun. He went as far as to say that Yunho could hate him if that's what it would take for him to forgive Hun. Clenching his fist, Naru says to Yunho that he is the only one Hun can lean on. Yunho just hugs him and thanks him for sharing everything with him. That night, Yunho is lying in his bed unable to sleep, as he keeps thinking about how hard everything must have been for Hun. He wished that Hun had told him everything instead of just suffering alone, as they are mates and he deserves a chance to comfort Hun. He keeps talking to himself, pretending to have a conversation with Hun, as he complains about how he will know if Hun will not share anything with him. He wanted Hun to lean on him just like he did when he was suffering. With tears in his eyes, he slowly drifts to sleep while thinking about how Hun is making him look like a bad guy. After falling asleep, he dreams about the tiger cub. He keeps mewing and calling for him. The tiger cub represents Hun in his dreams. Yunho shouts at him, asking the tiger cub to stop calling him because he hates him. Listening to his harsh words, the tiger cub starts crying and sits dejectedly on the ground. He is a tiger but looks like a sad, kicked puppy. Yunho's heart breaks to see this, and he rushes forward to hug the tiger cub, quickly apologizing for his cruel words. He tells the tiger that he doesn't really hate him and didn't mean the words he spoke earlier. Yunho then comforts the tiger cub, saying that he likes him the most no matter what he does. Yunho wakes up from his dream with tears in his eyes and looks around to find Hei-ro floating around him. He tells Hei-ro to call Hun over, and not even a minute later, Hun appears in front of him. Hun stands a few feet away from the bed and repeatedly calls Yunho's name while crying uncontrollably. Yunho shouts at him to stop calling his name, saying that he hates him. He berates himself in his mind for being so harsh on Hun, as he should understand, because he also wanted to get revenge on the driver who murdered his family. Hun suddenly plops down on the ground and again apologizes to Yunho for his mistake. Yunho finally breaks and rushes forward to hug Hun. He apologizes, saying that he doesn't really hate him and has only said those things out of spite. Yunho asks Hun to stop crying, who then looks at him with tears in his eyes and rubs his face into his. Hun apologizing again. He leans forward and sits down on Hun's lap, hugging him tightly. He confesses to Hun how much he misses him, which relieves the tiger, who replies that he also misses Yunho very much. Hun is sitting on the sofa, burying his face in Yunho's neck, who is sitting on his lap. With a fake irritation, Yunho asks Hun how long he is going to stay like this, while secretly admiring his devilishly handsome looks. Hun replies that he just wants to stay like this a little longer, as they haven't seen each other for a week. Yunho says that he should treat Naru to a nice dinner, because if it weren't for him telling Yunho the truth, they still wouldn't be together. Hun pulls Yunho into his chest while telling him how he even wanted to complain about his injuries just so he could see Yunho. He tells Yunho how he kept blaming himself every day, as none of these would have occurred if he hadn't gotten lost in his revenge. Yunho leans into him and asks him why he didn't share how much he was suffering. Hun replies that he didn't want to burden him, proving that Yunho's bandmates were right about him. Yunho asks him if it burdened him when Yunho shared about his past struggles and needed Hun's help. Hun says that it was not the case, and instead he was happy that Yunho leaned on him, as it made him feel more important. Yunho says that he feels the same way and turns around, now straddling Hun. He then says that he has no idea what he wants to know first, but he wants to ask Hun about his life. He hugs Hun, saying that he can't know anything if Hun will not share, and he doesn't want them to grow apart, so he wants Hun to share his story. Hun squeezes him, agreeing to tell Yunho everything, as he also doesn't want them to be away from each other. Yunho asks him why he and Naru need to go through the soul's memory when it is that painful for them. Hun replies that it is because they have to sort through those memories. They went through all the memories of the soul to decide the person's end based on whether it was a bad or good person. After they sort through those memories, an officer double-checks them to make sure they are accurate. Yunho looks at Hun sadly after hearing that and cups his cheeks, requesting that he ask for his help whenever things get hard. Hun looks at him with admiration, agreeing to lean on him. Yunho jokingly talks about how reliable he is, but when Hun agrees with him, he gets offended, saying it looks like Hun is mocking him. Hun quickly defends himself, saying he is not making fun of Yunho but rather can't stop smiling because he is just so happy. Yunho happily hugs his mate, amazed by how cute he is. Hun hugs him more tightly, content with smelling Yunho's warm scent. Later they are both lying on the bed with Yunho lying on top of Hun. He asks Hun his opinion on his performance, saying that he deliberately chose an outfit matching Hun's that day. Hun replies that Yunho looked mesmerizing, so much so that he can't take his eyes off him. We all couldn't take our eyes off our precious Yunho. Yunho lies his head on Hun's chest, happy with the compliments, as that is what he wants to hear. Hun softly strokes his hair, saying that Yunho looked like a completely different person on the stage. He then says that since Yunho is back now, he wants to get kissed on the lips. The statement momentarily confuses Yunho, but then he remembers what he said to Hun on the day of his year-end performance. He fulfills his promise and leans forward, pressing his lips against Hun. They kiss passionately, not wanting to pull away from each other. After separating, Yunho lies back down on Hun's chest and suddenly remembers the tiger cub he always saw in his dreams. He says that now he can understand why Hun always appears in his dreams as a tiger cub. Hun is surprised to hear that, but he doesn't have time to focus on that information as Yunho starts to press kisses on his chest. He is startled by the sudden attention he is getting from Yunho and tries to ask the latter what he is doing. Yunho says that since Hun has already marked his neck, he is going to do the same and mark Hun's whole body. He then continues to kiss Hun's chest, nibbling on his skin, leaving hickeys everywhere. Hun just strokes his head with complete adoration and lovingly gazes on Yunho's eyes when he looks up. Feeling content and happy, he nuzzles against Yunho's face. Hun then suddenly switches their positions and pushes Yunho down while he hovers over him as they continue to admire each other's bodies. The next morning, when they go to meet their friends, Naru asks if Hun got hurt. Apparently, Hun proudly showed off his hickeys and told their friends how Yunho had marked him. Yunho rushes forward to stop him from saying anything further, while Naru quickly covers his eyes, not wanting to see anything unholy. Hun continues talking, explaining that since he and Yunho are mates, they can only surrender their bodies to each other. Yunho is utterly embarrassed and presses his palm on Hun's lips, trying to keep him from saying anything else. Naru turns toward Ki Young-hoon, saying that they should go home and do the same together. Ki Young-hoon agrees with him and they instantly disappear from there. Yunho is still struggling to stop his tiger, who keeps kissing him. Hun finds himself regretting saying those things in front of Naru and Ki Young-hoon. At that time, he was really excited about seeing Yunho for a long time, but his actions embarrassed Yunho, who banned him from any physical contact. He is finding it really hard to stay away from Yunho and keeps counting the days. Meanwhile, Yunho is lounging on the sofa in his apartment, talking to himself about how his schedule would be hectic due to upcoming festivals and their solo concert preparations. As he is saddened by not having many lazy days from then on, Hei-ro rubs against his cheek and amuses Yunho when he figures that the goblin flame is trying to cheer him up. His thoughts are directed toward Hei-ro as he realizes that they have known each other for some time now and thanks the little guy for always being there for him. As Hei-ro nuzzles his cheek, Yunho asks him what he actually looks like. Quickly following his words, the goblin flame then takes the form of a human. From where these devilishly handsome men are coming from, a man who is built like a Greek god with long shiny blonde hair appeared in front of Yunho. Instead of being happy, Yunho is traumatized when he sees that the man who is Hei-ro in human form stands naked in front of him. He quickly looks away as Hei-ro tries to hug him and shouts at him to stay away. Just then Hun comes there and sees a naked Hei-ro trying to hug Yunho, who is yelling at him to put something on first before coming near him. Confused by the situation, he asks what is happening and is surprised when Yunho jumps into his arms. Hun is happy when Yunho hugs him, considering himself lucky to get a hug from his mate despite being under the physical ban. Hei-ro is sad to see this and says that he also wants to join the hug, but instead gets scolded by Hun, who tells him to put on some clothes before approaching Yunho. Hei-ro finally realizes his mistake and quickly apologizes, saying that he was unaware of being naked as it had been a long time since he took human form. He quickly puts on his clothes, worried that Yunho would hate him for his mistake. Yunho quickly assured him that he would never hate Hei-ro and that he was just startled. Hei-ro is happy to hear this and tries to hug Yunho, but has to stop when Hun picks up Yunho and tells Hei-ro to keep his hands away from his mate. Hei-ro is irritated to hear from Hun while the other two are immersed in each other. Yunho asks Hun to put him down, but Hun refuses, saying he doesn't weigh that much. Later, Yunho sits with Hei-ro listening to how he was a pretty boy but decides to bulk up after what happened to the butterfly Yun. Yunho is more confused by Hei-ro's current state as he sits on the sofa looking depressed with his head between his knees. Hei-ro explained his insecurity, saying that if he were also cute like Naru, Yunho would not have reacted that way earlier. Yunho quickly stands up and hugs Hei-ro, stroking his blonde hair, saying it is not the case. He says that he was just shocked because Hei-ro ran toward him without any clothes, not because of his looks. Hun began to tap his finger from the side as Hei-ro said that the hug was very comfortable and warm. Yunho says that Hei-ro talks a lot like Nar, but is interrupted when Hun wraps his arms around Yunho's waist, pulling him back while still hugging Hei-ro. Hei-ro irritatedly shouts at Hun to let go, which amuses Yunho as he comments that Hei-ro looks tough but is actually very adorable. Later, Yunho and Hun are sitting in his room when Yunho asks Hun why he spoke to other guys formally, but he always spoke to Yunho casually ever since the beginning. Hun just says that he doesn't know, but Yunho sits on the sofa beside him, insisting that he must have a reason for that. He tickles Hun's neck, wanting to know the truth. Hun pulls him into his lap, saying that he did it because he thought Yunho would hate him if he spoke casually to his friends. This surprised Yunho, so he asked Hun when he first started liking him. Hun truthfully replies that he might have realized it later, but deep inside he knew he liked Yunho from the start. Yunho comments that Hun is adorable even though Hun wouldn't talk to him formally. Hun asks him if he wants him to do that, to which Yunho replies that he just wants to see how it would be if Hun talked to him in that way with his handsome face. He then asks Hun to try this for 10 minutes, to which Hun happily agrees. Yunho then sits on the bed and casually asks Hun to join him. For a moment he is worried that Hun doesn't like it, but he quickly changes his mind when Hun comes forward and hugs him. Hun confesses that he was thinking about how he would have liked Yunho even if he were the older one. Yunho says that for the rest of the day he will be the older guy, to which Hun agrees to play the act without any hesitation.